Hello, good evening, and welcome to our district webinar on contest training for judges and for competitors. Wonderful to have you with us here. So thank you for giving up part of your evening to learn about contests. Now, while I'm talking in the chat box, I'd love to hear where you're from, your home club, maybe what part of the world you're in. And that chat box will become your friend tonight. So we're going to have a lot of interaction between us. So please do put in the chat box where exactly you are connecting to us from. I'd love to hear you to do that. So let's have that in the chat box if we can. And I'm just going to check we are all connecting okay. Okay, I've got another laptop to my side. So let's have that in the chat box. Where are you from? Richard from Beckenham. Love to have you with us again, Richard. Nice to see you, my friend. And we'll see what else is coming in tonight to see us. And then I know that you can see me and you can hear me, which is obviously the great thing about this technology as well. Carmen from Denmark. Well, thank you, Carmen, for giving up your evening to join us here live. So for those of you who have not had the pleasure of meeting whilst people are coming in, and please they do put that in the chat box. My name is Andy O'Sullivan. I'm in London and here in the UK, where in District 91, I have the honour of being the chief judge. The role of chief judge is to help with contests, to help people with their roles, their responsibilities in contests, and keep the standard high, which I think we deserve, or our contestants and members actually deserve for all the work they are putting into all their contests. I've been a member of Toastmasters for 11 years now, and obviously during that time I've been to a lot of contests from club, area, division and district. And as part of that and some of the things I've seen that we'll be covering in our session here tonight as well. So first we got Susanna from Andover. Hello, Susanna. Jose from Croydon Communicators. Great to have you with us. Thank you. Got more people, so guys, please put that chat window up. See, we've got about another, it's going up 18 at the moment, and it's still coming in. I'm just checking my laptop here is connecting. And then I know everything is working as we want it to be. So today we're going to look at judging, how we can be better judges when we are doing the contest. And also, maybe if you're competing or you're thinking of competing, what are the judges doing? Because I think if you know what the judges are doing, then that helps you to even get that, that one extra point that can make a difference between whether you're placed or whether you come first, second, or even third, and how we can, as judges, can do that for everyone as well. So let me move on. I'm going to share my screen and then or my presentation, and then give you an indication of what we're going to cover in our time together. As we go through, please do put any questions in the chat box. And what I'll do every time I come to the end of a little session, I'll come back to the chat, see if there's any questions on what we've been covering before we move on to the next one. So just say feel free to put those in as we go through. Then move over to our main presentation of the night to give you an overview of what it is that we're going to be covering together. And this is it, the judges training. So some of the things we're going to be looking at, the purpose of contests. Why do we have contests? And there are some various reasons that we do them. Both, I think people have their own views, their personal views, and of course, the official views from Toastmasters as well. Then we're going to be looking at our obligations, the obligations that we have when we're judging, when we're out there doing that for helping our clubs and our members as well. We're going to cover the, the barriers there are to objectivity, what it is, the judges that the barriers we face as judges, and how we can recognize them. And then when we recognize them, of course, how we can overcome them as well. Then there are some misconceptions, and these misconceptions could affect your voting. And if they affect your voting, they can obviously affect the result. So we're going to look at what are some of these common misconceptions there are out there when we're judging. And then there's the form itself, the ballot form. We'll take a look at that. We're going to look at how to fill it in, the different areas of it, so we have a full understanding of the ballot form. And then after we've done all that, yes, it's going to be your chance to practice. So we're going to have like a mini contest. You'll get a briefing. I'll give you a briefing as though after chief judge and your judges at a contest. I'm going to show you some videos and you'll have the opportunity to fill in the ballot form and vote as though you were a judge. And then we'll have some feedback. We'll even check. We have a little poll. We can check who we voted into first or second place winner and some feedback on how you felt it. So in the email confirmation, there was a link to the ballot form. If you've not printed it, please do print it. It will be handy to have that for that session. If you'll be getting that print, if you've not already got so. I will be displaying it on the screen, but it's quite small, I think, on the screen when you're looking at it. But so if you've got one handy, that's really going to help you as we're going through. So as I mentioned, one of the things we're going to be looking at is our case studies as well. So when you go to contests, there are some certain situations that you're going to face as the chief judge, as a judge yourself, or maybe even as an official. We'll look at a few case studies of common scenarios that you might face so that you'll know how to deal with those when you are out and about in our contests. So my first question is contests. Why do we have contests? And this is your chance to be interactive. So tell me in the chat box what it is that you think. Why do we have contests? What are the reasons, in your view, that we have the contests? So please put that in the chat box while I check my second laptop to make sure everything is going well for us here. Why do we have contests? What's your view on that as to why we have them? There are various routes. Now, if you would be on the recent webinars on how to organise a contest, you might be slightly ahead because we did kind of touch on this and cover this. But why else? Why else do we do them? There are some various reasons. So to challenge ourselves, and they do challenge us, don't they? I think contests, when you're competing, they are challenging. I know when I've done it, that it does push that little comfort zone as well. To develop, Carmen, absolutely, they do develop. To improve, Richard, 100%. We all improve. And I think we improve two ways when we do that. You know, as ourselves, when we're competing and when we're all watching as well. To compete against the best speaker, absolutely, yeah. There's always, especially the international speech, as Jose says, because then you've got to do speech 6 or above, so that you are competing against some of them out of our comfort zone. Totally, it does push us, especially if you go out, you're up to the area. It's changing that comfort zone, isn't it? Mohammed, to showcase our best skill, absolutely right. It does. It shows us because we're pushing ourselves, we're growing our skills, and we're out there competing in say different areas, different levels. So it absolutely does. Great answers. Let's see what Toastmasters say. These are the official reasons why we organise them. An opportunity for competitive speaking. And it's probably the only times, the 2 times of the years when we have contests, and we do competitive speaking. Normally, we do that in a supportive and encouraging environment that our wonderful clubs provide. And these are the 2 times. Here in District 91, we are doing the International Speech Contest and we're doing the evaluation contests. That's what we're doing. Different parts of the world, different districts will have different contests. They will be doing the international, but I know many are doing the table topics as well. So that when we schedule them varies. The international speech is definitely one we do in the spring, but it's what goes with it. But that is the time to practice that competitive speaking. And it does add a variety to our our meetings when we have contests. We have some of the best speakers, as somebody was saying, in the contest. So especially in the international, where you have to have done speech 6. So some of our best speakers. And I know from when I've been to contests, I had contests in my clubs, guests see some of these best speakers they aspire to be. And it becomes a wonderful recruitment opportunity for our clubs to have these great speeches and a high standard of contest. So it adds the interest and it gives them that great educational program. And as we said as well, we see some great speakers when we are doing this in our clubs areas. And if you can get the opportunity to go to different levels, do so, because you learn so much from seeing other speakers from outside your club and at those higher levels. So I know that I always tell people that when I joined Toastmasters, in a couple of months, I went to an area contest. And by seeing some of those speakers, it totally changed the way how I gave speeches. totally change it, because you realize there are different things you can do rather than what I used to do, and I admit to doing that kind of boring lecturer type talk, the one I've seen all my life, and I just carried on doing it. So there are different ways. So always the opportunity to go off and do that. So that's why we do them. But then as judges, we have obligations. And these are important obligations that we have. We know we're going to be sitting there. We know we're going to be judging. But we've got obligations. And let's go through some of these people that we've got obligations to, because it's really important to know why we're doing it. And we've got, in our role and our responsibility. So first of all, we've got obligations to the contestants. Naturally, they're there. They've worked hard to get to that, to prepare their speech. They've rehearsed it. They've practiced it. They prepared it. And they naturally expect and ultimately deserve fairness and impartiality, don't they? That's what they expect and quite rightly deserve in the judging that we are performing. We're going to cover a bit later some things that might affect that, but that's what they deserve. And we as judges have that. Then we have a responsibility to Toastmasters. The Toastmasters, as we know, is a wonderful organisation, and bad judging can affect the reputation of Toastmasters International, maybe the officials, the club, the brand itself, our leaders in our districts, because it can create animosity, it can create issues around the club, the area, the division. So we have an obligation when we're judging, as well as to ourselves, as to Toastmasters. And then there's the audience. The people have given up their time to come and support their club, their friends, their members of their club, wherever level you're competing at. They expect and they deserve a good speech contest, one with fair and unbiased judging. And that's what we should be giving them. Because the audience themselves can feel that cheated, maybe, if they feel that the judges have made a poor decision. And of course, it could even discourage them from competing in other contests when they see that happening. So we owe it to those people as well. And then there's judges. As judges, when we are doing that, we have an obligation to us, to ourselves. As Toastmasters, we've made a personal commitment, haven't we, to grow, to have self-development. That's why we go to our clubs, to push our comfort zone, to keep growing, to keep learning. And part of that commitment is to dedicate ourselves to making the right decision when we're judging a contest, to be fair, to be impartial, to make the right decision. So they're the people that we have obligations to when we're out there judging. But what is the difference between judging and evaluating? And I'd love to see your views on that. So please put that in the chat box again. What is the difference between judging and evaluating? Judging is something we do in contests, of course, but evaluating we're doing all the time in our clubs. But what is really the difference between those two? And how would they vary? Or maybe you think they don't vary. Maybe you think there's no difference. But if you think there's a difference, what is the difference between them? Judging and evaluating. Because we give them different names. We're contests, we're out there judging. How do you feel they could vary? That's what I'd love to see from you. How do they vary? If they do, what do you think could be the difference between judging a contest when we're out there in our clubs, our area, in our divisions, maybe even our district? We're judging, or we're there as an evaluator, which we might be in our club. So Hamid says, judging focuses more on scoring a performance as opposed to evaluating, which it does. Yeah, absolutely. Susanna, judging has a competitive edge. It certainly does, Susanna. Mami, evaluating focuses on providing feedback. It does, absolutely. It certainly does. And that, I think, is the difference, isn't it, between them? Jose, judging to give points, marked, and evaluating is describing. We certainly are giving points and marks, and we'll look at that later when we see the ballot form, how we give those marks out as well. Because when we are evaluating and when we're judging, they are separately. So judging, what the thing when we're a contest judge at any level, we're there to find that winner. We select the winner based on the criteria that laid out on the ballot form, the form which we will look at. We're not there to evaluate. We're not there in any way to evaluate. It's purely to select the winner. Whereas when it's evaluating, which we do in our clubs, we're there to appraise and advise, to say, how can they get better? What a great job they've done. What can they do now to be even better next time? That's what we're looking to do. But we're not doing that when we're judging. It's purely to select that winner. And the big thing as well, when we evaluate, we might stand up at the front of the meeting and give our evaluation. We might fill in the slip or speak to the speaker privately afterwards. With judging, we don't do that. And judging is confidential, totally confidential. We don't share it in any way. We don't explain the decisions to the contestants or why, or say to the contestants how they could improve. We don't share any feedback. And the reason is that if we're having to justify our decisions to the contestants, it could distract us from filling the form and giving that fair, unbiased feedback, voting on the form. And that could lead to improper judging. So we don't give any feedback to anybody. We don't justify it. We don't share it. We don't tell anybody. It's totally 100% confidential. So let's look at what makes some good judges. What is good judging? That's what we're going to have a quick look at now. So a judge has to be accurate. Of course, you know, as a judge, when you're filling the form in, you've got to be committed to making the correct decision. The correct decision, and to fill that form in correctly. Form we look at how to fill that form in correctly. Because if it's not filled in correctly, it could even become invalid. And that can affect the whole result of the contest if the form is not filled in correctly. So we've got to be accurate in their marking and decision and filling in that form as well. And also as a judge, you know, we want to be totally fair, don't we? We want to be fair to the contestants, to be totally impartial. So we wouldn't let, when we're sitting there and we're judging the contestants, going through the contest, we wouldn't let things like our friendships affect the voting that we've given, or anything to do with the speaker, such as their age, sex, religion, their political beliefs, profession, whether or not you like the speech subject or not. They're all irrelevant. We look at our form, we judge them against that. And that's how we make it fair to everybody in the contest. And as a judge, we want to be trustworthy as well, because the participants have entrusted us to reach that fair decision, to select the best speaker from the criteria, to select that winner. And as judges, we need to live up to that trust that we have been given. So that's what we would want to do. And we also, as judges, want to be knowledgeable, as you will be after this webinar, because you'll understand the contest rules. You'll understand what to do before the contest, how to ensure everything is processed correctly. So look at the rules and the procedures and the forms before the contest even start. And you'll know that we don't make exceptions. We don't bend the rules. The rules are there. They're equally applied to everybody. You'll know the judging form. You'll know how to judge properly. And so this is what you will certainly do at the end, or have all this information at the end of our webinar today. And finally, we need to be good listeners. Listen carefully to each of the contestants, not to become distracted in any way. And I have seen this in contests. Judges on the phone, texting, replying to messages while people are talking. Even timers doing it, who have clearly got to be focused on the timing of the contest, not under the table looking down at their phone. That's not a place to be checking messages. We give our time and listen actively to the speakers, the people who put all that time in. So we become good listeners. And hopefully you can see the importance of that, to be a good listener, to be knowledgeable, to understand, to be trustworthy, fair in all what we do, accurate in the form, because that makes such a difference to the contest and how we can then be fair to everybody. So they are the main areas that we want to be as judges. The next session we're going to look at, and I'll just check the chat box before we do, is some barriers to objectivity, some things that can maybe affect how objective we are on the result we give. And by being aware of them, we can then seek to avoid them. So let me just check if there's any questions. No questions as yet. So guys, if any come in, please feel free to just put them in the chat box while we do that. Any questions you have on anything we're covering, put it in the chat box, and say each time we come to an end of the session, I will check in. So that being said, let's move on to the barriers of objectivity. And some of these you may even have seen or heard in your club contests when you've been around, or any of the contests you've been to. The first of them, and a lot of people have this one, it is the position. The position in which the speaker is. And I know many people like to have, when they're competing, have a preference to their position. And to a degree, there's something to that, because when we're presented with a list, in what's known as a sealed position effect, we can generally remember the first and the last better. Now, you can remember the last day of where you did at work, you can remember your first day in the office, but you probably don't remember every day that goes on in between. So that's just human nature. So by being aware of that, we can make sure that we pay close attention to all the speakers. So we remember the first speaker, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, right way through to the sixth or seventh, depending how many there are in the contest, sometimes even more. So what is the position speakers? Actively listen to them. And as judges, we want to compensate for the human memory, the human mind, by making sure we are focused on every speaker as they're progressing through the contest. Another thing that we see in contests is the champion for the underdog. And many people have this view that, it's their first time they've ever competed. They've never done it before. And therefore, they've put in more work. They've put in more effort, preparation and time. So therefore, maybe they deserve a little bit more leeway. A few more marks, maybe. But no, we don't do that, because we're just looking at our form and we're marking on the form. So the fact that it's their first time, they're new, they're nervous, we again wouldn't give any extra marks. That's another objectivity issue that we want to be aware of. And this one is as well, and this one I've seen so many times, the halo effect. I've been to so many contests where people would say, oh, they're a really good speaker. They're always great. Oh, they're going to win. They're really good. I've seen them loads of times. People say that all the time. All the time, they think. And there are, in our clubs, areas and divisions and districts, there are certain people who compete a lot and win a lot. But we don't give them extra marks or assume that they're going to be the winner before they've even stood on the stage. We're going to treat each one the same. And just because somebody is always very funny, always very creative in their speeches, we wouldn't give them meant to start giving them extra marks and credit just for that before they've even gone on the stage. We'd look at each speech and then look at the form and mark purely against that. So we're looking at how they're performing just here today against that form. I suppose the opposite of that is the reverse halo effect. It's totally reverse. And this might be because you disapprove of that speaker in some way. Maybe you've seen them somewhere and you don't like them. Maybe they were president of your club and they stepped down at short notice and caused issues. Maybe you're unhappy with their past speech. Maybe there's something you don't like about them. Maybe you didn't like their last speech. Whatever. And therefore we start downgrading them before they've even stood on the stage. Again, we wait for her to go on stage, we listen to her speech, and then we look at the form and then we do our marking. So we wouldn't go against them, for or against somebody, just purely before they've even got there based on past experience. We often see speakers in our contests. We might see them at our club, our area and division. We see them progress through. Maybe we saw them last year. And second time around is when we start considering their past performance and comparing it to this. It could be that maybe last time you felt they should have won, but they didn't. You felt they should have placed, but they didn't. They should have done better, but they didn't. And therefore, the tendency is to maybe give them more marks. Or maybe this is, say, the area contest, and you've seen them in the club and they were really good in the club, but today they weren't so good for some reason. Maybe they forgot some words. And therefore, you're considering the club speech rather than the area speech, which we are in this situation. Again, we wouldn't consider that. We're just considering this contest. Whether they should have won last time is irrelevant. Whether their club speech was better, again, is totally irrelevant. We're just focusing on this speech the whole time. Always what we're seeing in front of us. And not the norm is where we look at what's going on here and think, well, that's not what we do in our club. Our area contest, we don't do that. It's irrelevant what you do in your club. Whether you use a greeting, whether you use a lectern, whether you stand in a certain position, has again no relevance. We just look at the form. I know I keep saying that, but we're looking at the form. We're looking at the speech, and that's what we're judging against. So customs of your club, your area, do not come in when we're looking at a speech and when we are judging it. And the other one is our normal human prejudices and personal preferences. Now, we all naturally have certain likes and dislikes. We like certain types of speeches more than others. There's probably no way to control those. It's kind of human. And that's why it's good to have a large pool of judges to even everything out. We try to make it, I suppose, kind of objective to the form. Although judging is by its nature, I suppose, subjective. But we need to be aware of our own prejudices, our own personal preferences to ensure that we are judging the speaker, we're judging them against the form, filling in that criteria. And above all, whenever it comes to contests, whenever it comes to any contest, any question, any issue, the thing to have a look at is the rules. Know the rules. Have the rule book available in your contest. Know where you are with it. Because you know what? That's really all what it is down to. Knowing the rules each time. And the club, the Toastmasters rule book has everything you need. I get loads of questions at this time of year. It's kind of like my two busy times of the year. Each time I get all emails and questions. I've even had panic phone calls from the counting room with issues. And yet it's all there. Toastmasters produced this wonderful rule book. It's got everything you need to do it. So always have that at hand, look at it, keep an eye on it, and that will give you all the guidance that you ever need. The next session we're going to look at is the forms we need as judges, the forms we use. So let me just check back to the chat box. Nothing there as yet, which is excellent, which shows I'm doing a brilliant job covering this so smoothly for you that it's all making clear sense, I'm sure. So we will move on to our forms, the forms we would use when judging, and the forms we need to be aware of, make sure we complete them correctly. So the first is the Code of Ethics. And this is the form that you will get when you're judging. The chief judge will have these, they will give them to you. So read them, understand them before you sign them and return them. It's got in there to make sure check your eligibility and then say that's the first bit, and then underneath your Code of Ethics. Always read that. It kind of reminds us of what we're there for and what to do. And often they don't get read. So that's the first form you'll fill in. And then after you've done that, the chief judge will then give you the ballot form. Now, we're playing tonight and just talk about the international speech contest. So this is the only form I'll show you, but there are others. If you're doing the table topics, evaluation or the humour speech, the forms are different. They're totally different in that the criteria, the items down the side are different. People will often, and I have had this several times, they give me the wrong form and say it will do. But no, it won't do. We have to have the right forms for every contest. So let's have a look at this form in a bit more detail, because there are certain areas of it, and it's trying to understand the form to make sure we fill in correctly, we use it correctly, and yeah, that's how we get the correct results. So there's two parts to the form. The top part is your kind of guide. It's where you're going to do the marking. That's what we do. That's purely the guide. That is the top part. Now, the second part below the dotted line, that is your ballot. The ballot is the part that you tear off and give back to the counters afterwards. The top part is a guide. It's a bit you take home, you destroy, you never show it to anybody. Feed it to the dog, put it in the shredder, but keep it away. We don't need to show that to anyone. Now, down here, there's two areas, the signature and the name. They need to be signed and printed. If you give your ballot form in without your name or without your signature or without either, your ballot form's not going to be counted. And we don't want that. You've sat there, you've done all the work. So let's make sure the form is filled in correctly so that it is counted. So I would always, when I'm chief judge, ask people to do that straight away. And that ensures they are given back. But even then, sometimes it won't happen. We do need both. Then when you do this, down this area here, you're going to put in, it's a bad circle, but that is the area where you put in your first, second and third place winners. On the form, we have to have from you as a judge, the first, second and third. Always. There can be no ties on the form. If you happen to have a tie when you've completed the voting, it's down to you to break the tie, no one else. If you put in a tie, your form will be invalid and not counted. If you only put down the first and second place winners, your form again will be invalid and not counted. It has to be those clear 1, 2, 3 down the bottom. Whilst you're being briefed as a judge, the contest chair will be briefing the contestants. They will be drawing the lots and the order in which the speaker will be speaking. Then they will announce that before the contest starts. And then it's your opportunity to write them here, the order in which they have been drawn. It's numbered 1 through to 10. And write the name clearly. You can read it, because later on you'll put that in the bottom with the person with the most marks. An alternative to doing that is to fill in the form the opposite way. Do it that way. And then what you can do, and I know a lot of people do this, you will fill in the far right, do the marking, fold the paper over, and then you'd mark the next contestant. And that kind of sometimes stops a comparison between each of the speakers as well. So it's like an alternative way of filling the form. And before the contest starts, one of the things I'd always suggest is fold the form, this area here where the dotted lines are, fold it a few times, maybe when you're in the briefing with the judge, and then it's kind of easier to tear off when you're in the contest as well. It's kind of pre-folded nicely down. It makes that a lot easier for you. That is the main form that we would use in all of our contests. So the forms are going to be the same, but the side part here, this is the area, this bit here, that will vary depending on each of the different contests. And if you notice on the form, there's nowhere actually listed, no space for you to record the times. They don't give us that space. And that's because as a judge, the time of the speech is of no relevance to you. Whether you feel they went over time or under time is no relevance. Even if they have gone way over time, we will still judge them based purely on that criteria. That's all. Nothing else. So as judges, we do not consider the time in the voting. That's another thing that we don't want to consider at all. It's nothing to do with us. We're focused on the speech. That's it. So let's look in a little bit more detail at this top part, which we've just mentioned, to see what it is that covers. And then we've got an understanding. Again, each form is different, but this will give us an understanding of what it is that we're looking for in each one. So let me just zoom in a bit on that, and hopefully it's going to come in. There we go. So you see, there's 100 points we get, and there's three main areas: the content, the delivery, and the language. And each of those themselves then breaks down into further sections. The first part, and one that gives the most marks, is actually the content. That's 50 marks. We've got 30 marks for the delivery and 20 there for the language. So let's zoom in again a bit more and look at these in detail. The content, so that's 50% of the marks. So this is really an important part of the form. And here we're kind of looking, as we go through each of those three areas, 20, 15, 15 is the maximum marks. And these are guidelines, purely guidelines. How you do it is up to you. If I know some people who say they're so bad at maths, they just divide everything by 2. So when they add up, it's easier. But the percentage is clearly there. So let's look at what this would be. We might look at, for example, the development of the speech and consider, did the speech have a clear opening, body and conclusion? Did you feel the speaker's ideas were clearly presented in a easy to follow, logical order? Did they transition and move smoothly through from one concept to the next? Was the speech purpose clear to you? That's maybe what you want to consider in the development area. Then we have the effectiveness of the speech. The effectiveness would be the audience reactions, maybe, to the speech itself. Was it relevant to the audience, the subject? Was it presented clearly? Was the purpose clear to you? Was it there to entertain, to inform, persuade, inspire? And did the speaker actually achieve that purpose as well? That's what you might want to consider when you're looking at the effectiveness overall. And then there's the value of the speech as well. The value might be here how the speaker, did they have a substantive, logical, and was it clearly defined message? Were their thoughts original? Did you feel that as they were speaking, they were nice, original thoughts? And was, of course, the speech in good taste, which is obviously important in any speech. So that's the kind of things we would look at when we're going through the form and looking at the content. Then the next part of the form, that's the 50 votes at the top, or 50 points. The delivery. And this is often the part that people find easier to vote on, the delivery, when this is what they see. And that's sometimes easier for people to look at. So the physical part, this would be obviously their body language and where it was appropriate, whether it was purposeful. Did they use the whole of the speaking area? Did they use that in an effective way rather than pacing? Was it effective, the staging? How did they look? Did they look confident and sure of the purpose of their speech? What did we hear in their voice? Was it flexible in the modulation and tone, in volume? Could we hear it? Was there clear enunciation and pronunciation? They're the kind of things we want to consider when we're looking or listening for their voice, and we're obviously marking it down. And then there's the manner of the delivery. Were they confident, enthusiastic on how they were sharing that with you? Did they show concern for you as a judge, as an audience member in the speech as well? That is what we would cover and consider in the delivery and within the manner part of that. And now the language they've used, and this is 20% of the marks. It's obviously reflecting word usage and their grammatical skill within it. So the first is appropriateness. The appropriateness. Did the word choice match and fit the speech, fit the audience? Did it promote understanding of their message as the speaker actually intended it? Did it fit the occasion, their choice of words as well? And then we've got to look at the correctness of it. The grammar, pronunciation, word selection. Did it reflect that they prepared and maybe studied, used the right words to convey their message? And were those words effective as well? That's what you will look at in that area. And that is the form. That is the form that you have. So each one would vary depending on the contest. But that is the form that you'd have. And that's kind of things to consider by going through it. On the back of the form, every form, take time to read it. There is a guide. It reminds you the criteria that we've gone through. It reminds you of what each section is for. And again, it's got that code of ethics, which is so important. That is so important. So take time to read that as well. Let me just check on the questions. No, we're all good on that. Well, then you know what's next, don't you? We've gone through the form. We've covered what makes good judging. We've now got a clear understanding of what it is that we should be doing as a judge. So therefore, it's contest time. It's going to be where we're going to have the opportunity to practice these new skills and to do some marking as judges. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to start that off with a briefing. So please make sure you've got a pen. Please make sure you've got the judges form available as well. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you 3 videos. After each video, there will be 1 minute's silence, as in I won't be speaking, for you to do your voting. And then afterwards, I'll allow about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes for you to do your voting, the final voting for the final speaker, and to tally them all up. An important thing to realize, and this is a common mistake I see in contests at all levels, club, area, division, and district, is that after the final speaker, the contest chair will often say 2 minutes for the judges. No! There's nothing in the rules that says 2 minutes. Nothing at all. It's 1 minute, 100% between each speaker. There's silence. Speaker 1, 1 minute silence for the judges. Speaker 2, 1 minute silence. After the final speaker, the judges have as long as they need to do the voting, to tally up the numbers, to fill in the ballot form, to tear it off, hold it up and give it to the counter. That takes 10 minutes. It takes 10 minutes. It's not 2 minutes. So if ever in your contest, do make sure it's not 2 minutes. That's rubbish. It's one of those unwritten rules that everybody seems to believe. It's not there. So you can have as long as you want. Unfortunately, I can't see how long you need. So I'm going to allow about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes after the final speaker. And in fact, what I will do as well, after the final one, I'm going to put a poll up. So once you've got that, you can start voting for who you put in first place. And that will give me an indication when people are finishing and you finish your voting, because I'll start seeing that coming in. And then you can maybe put some comments in how you felt the process as well. So let me do the briefing. When you're judge, there's a document which I prepared, and I'll give you the links to this as well. It's a full briefing for all the contestants, and it covers a lot of what we've gone through here today. A lot of it. But often chief judges do not even use this document. I've been for briefings where they give me the form, you sign it, and that's it really. And they don't explain the process. And there is some dear processes which we need to go through. So a lot of I've covered here with you today, but that's okay. We will use it as a reference as well. So let me now pretend I'm the chief judge, and I am now going to give you a briefing. And the briefing is detailed, which is why, again, when you go into contest, I always allow half an hour pre-contest for people to arrive, because it takes a while to do the briefing and it can't be rushed. Often I'm invited to contest and they say get there 10 minutes before the contest starts. That's simply not enough time to get everybody together, to do the briefings adequately and be ready for the contest. And as we've covered and we know, we owe it to our contestants to do the job well. So let me now step into my role as chief judge and give you what would be the briefing. So your goal today as judges is to select a first, second and first place winner in each contest rather than to evaluate. You have your guide and ballot. Please sign and print your name on the bottom. Ballots without both your name and signature will not be counted. So please sign your forms now. Read and familiarise yourself with the back of the ballot form that shows the judging criteria and the judge's code of ethics. Randomly seat yourself around the room. Do not sit next to a contestant. The contest chair will announce the speaking order that has been randomly drawn for each contest. Write the contestants' names across the top of the ballot form in the order drawn, either from left to right or right to left. At the conclusion of the speech, you'll be given 1 minute of silence to score the contestant based on the judging criteria shown in the form and to add up your score. After the final speech, you'll be provided with silence until the last contestant, and then write down your first, second and third place winners' names on the ballot form. Ties cannot be accepted. Break your own ties to give us that clear first, second and third place winner. You are not required to award placement based on your own numerical scores. Once completed, the official ballot across the bottom, it should be separated from the form and folded up, held up and passed to the ballot counter. Destroy the top part of the form. Do not discuss the results with anybody. Decline any invitation to provide feedback to the contestants and refrain from any public comment or criticism of today's contest. Judging is to be done only according to the criteria of the judge's guide and ballot. The following are reminders to help with fairness. The age, sex, race, creed, national origin, regional accent or professional beliefs are not considerations. Judge only today on the speaker's performance, not on past performance or indeed reputation. Do not judge on how well a speaker has done in the past or could have done, as this is not the consideration. The first and last speakers are not to be judged differently from those in the middle. Do not give a break to the underdog, e.g. a new Toastmaster. And do not give extra credit to a speaker because they have successfully competed in previous contests. Do not judge today's contest based on your club norms. Judge without concern for the timings. The timers will record the individual times for each speaker. Those times will be given to the chief judge, and any time disqualifications will be handled by the chief judge. The defined speaking area will be agreed with the contestants. Now, if I have that, by the way, as chief judge, I will tell you. Otherwise, I'll arrange for the contest chair to announce what is defined speaking area. Usually, it's at the front of the room, maybe up to the first row or second row of chairs. Now, as my point of interest, by the way, if a speaker comes out of the speaking area, for example, say it's agreed it's up to the first row of chairs and they walk to the back of the room, they can do that. They can't be disqualified for it. But as judges, we might decide to reflect that in the voting. Just as a point there. Protests and disqualifications. So this is an important area as well. Protests, and as a judge, you can make a protest. They are limited to eligibility and originality. They're the only two areas that can be protested, eligibility and originality. The rules state quite clearly the contestants must create their own speeches and each speech must be substantially original. Quoted material may be used, but it must be identified. Quoted material must be 25% or less of the speech. If a contestant does not give credit to the quoted sources, This is grounds for you as a judge to raise a protest. If a speech is more than 25% non-original and credit is still given to the source, that is still grounds for you to protest because it's more than 25%. Protest must be lodged prior to the announcement of the winner. Speak to me as chief judge, or just write protest on your ballot paper when you give it in to the ballot counter. If a protest is raised, a hearing will be convened. What we would do as judges, we will all meet and discuss that protest. If we decide to move forward with the protest, the contestant will then be called in and given the opportunity to respond. A majority of voting judges must concur with the decision to disqualify the contestant, and the decisions of the judges are final. And protests do happen. I've seen them at every level: club, area, division, and district, on originality. So if you're not sure, feel free to raise that as a protest. So before I give you the speaking order for our contest, we just check if there's anything here. What have we got here? Mummy says, I recently judged at a club on adversity, sat next to 3 contestants. 2 of them were next to me and 1 was behind me. I had no idea. Okay. Contestants like to sit randomly. It is difficult in a club. Often you can tell by the nerves and the way they are if you're in a different club. In a club, it is difficult because it's such a small area. If you're not sure, you can always ask somebody. But ideally, you do want to sit separately. And even when I'm marking, even if I've got nobody around me, I try and do it discreetly rather than a big pad and having fun. And you know, when you finish, turn the form over as well, Mohammed. I've seen people just leave it face up, even the whole time, so everybody can see their marking. Always keep it down as well. Richard, why do we always get such a wide variety of results? We do, and that's, I think, it's human nature, and that's why it's good to have a good pool of judges rather than 4 or 5. I mean, the minimum, there's a minimum. I would get a bigger pool. When it's clubs, try and get them from outside your club as well. It makes it more impartial. But you do. Sometimes in contests, I've seen it where basically everybody votes for the same people. Other times you'll get it where it's all over. And maybe that's a good reflection of a good contest, that it's so open as well. Let's then move on. So, my friends, here are our contestants for tonight's contest. First contestant, Richard Koo, Phyllis Prabhu, I believe that's pronounced, and Steve Bertrand. They are our contestants for tonight's contest. So let me get that set up for you, and hopefully you are ready to go. Remember, there will be 1 minute of silence after each speaker or each video, and then I'll go straight on to the next one, allowing about 1.5 minutes on the second one as well. Then after the final speaker, I'll allow 1.5 minutes. I'll pull up a poll, and please start voting or sharing with us who you place first when you're ready, and that would give me an indication as well. So here we go with our first contestant tonight. Our first contestant is Richard Koo. What I learned from complaining. What I learned from complaining. It's Richard Koo.
I used to complain a lot as a kid. I mean, who doesn't? Every single week, my mom would make a trip to Costco and always buy a 3-pack of cereal for my brother, my sister, and myself. 3-pack of cereal, Lucky Charms, Trix, and Cocoa Puffs. We all know it's a universal fact that Lucky Charms is the best, then Trix, and then Cocoa Puffs. Last week, I got to choose first. I chose, of course, Lucky Charms. And this week, because I got first pick, I was supposed to get third pick. But this week, I'm like, oh man, I really want Lucky Charms. I don't want Cocoa Puffs. So I'm like, I'm going to get my Lucky Charms. So I'm like, how am I going to do that? And I know. Ma! Auntie Kevin won't let me choose first. They always do this to me. They always do this. I always pick last. I always get the Cocoa Puffs. Michelle, Kevin, let your younger brother choose first. But he got to choose first last week. No, they're lying. They're lying. I never get to choose first. I always get the Cocoa Puffs. Let Richard choose first. Okay. So what I learned from this situation is that complaining works. But not always. When I was in middle school, it was 30 days out from a large algebra entrance exam. And I was sitting in the kitchen. My mom was chopping vegetables. And she's like, Richard, your exam's coming up in 30 days. I want you to take at least 30 practice tests, 2 hours each. And for every single question that you miss, you get to go back and correct it. Are you kidding me? There is no way I'm doing that. And I knew from my Lucky Charms experience that I could get my way out of this. So this is what I did. No, I'm not going to do it. And you can't make me. What'd you say? I said, I'm not going to do it and you can't make me. What'd you say? Say it one more time. I'm not going to do it and you can't make me. Richard, come right here. Come here. Why? No, I'm not going to come there. Come here, Richard. Come here. No, I'm not going to do it. You're going to hit me. Well, if you're not coming here, I'm going to come after you. And then we did the dance around the table. When she went this way, I went this way, and we kept going around the table. And she said, if you don't come here, the longer you wait, I'm going to hit you harder. And how atrocious is this? As a kid, you have to help your mom beat the crap out of yourself. So I'm like, no, don't hit me, as I dance around the table. And then finally, I'm like, okay. So she grabbed my arm. She grabbed my arm out. And when she went up, I'm like, and she went down, I'm like, ow! She said, why are you saying ow? I didn't even hit you yet. And she did it again, ow! And she's like, why are you saying ow? I didn't even hit you yet. I'm like, it didn't hurt physically, but right here. I didn't really say that because she would have beat the crap out of me. But what I learned from that experience is that complaining definitely does work. I got my marshmallows and my Lucky Charms, but it doesn't work for every single situation. Would you all just listen to me? I'm trying to give a speech right now. I'm trying to finish it up. Thank you.
So I have 1 minute for voting. Our second speaker is Phyllis Prabhu. Awesome things. Awesome things. Phyllis Prabhu.
Good afternoon, Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. In June 2008, a young guy in his 20s was going through a really difficult time in his life. A separation from his wife, a friend's suicide. When he felt his whole world was crashing down on him, he decided to take charge and change things. Do you know what he did? he chose to write a rather long list, a list of the nicer things, of the best things in life. He wrote a blog called 1,000 Awesome Things, and this went viral. 40,000 visitors a day, numerous blogger awards, and even a #1 spot on the New York Times. Why did this go viral? Why did it appeal to thousands of people almost instantaneously? Before we answer this question, let me tell you about 3 awesome things. 1. For me, it's that cup of coffee in the morning, that steaming cup of coffee. When I close my eyes, it's not just the warmth that I feel, the flavors, the aroma. They are my gateway to getting lost someplace else. Everything else seems less important when I'm sipping my first cup of coffee. 2. In my favorite TV series, The Office, one of the lead characters, Michael Scott, is very fond of bacon. He likes waking up to the smell of bacon. So much so that he wakes up earlier in the day, slaps down a few strips of bacon on the grill, goes back to sleep. When he wakes up to the smell of crackling bacon. 3.
Raindrops on roses, whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things.
Does anyone remember the song? Yeah. This is from the epic Sound of Music. The lead character, Maria, is singing about her favorite things, all small little things. These are my favorites too. Before we proceed any further, let me first tell you what I mean by awesome things. These awesome things, have something in common. They happen often. We enjoy these, and sadly, they're almost always overlooked. Are you wondering, why is this important? Why should we give it any importance at all? Let me reverse the question for you right there. Let's do a very quick thought experiment. Does anyone own a dog here? That's the wrong word. Does anyone have a pet? When you stroke your pet, your dog, how does it feel? Doesn't it feel wonderful? The fur against your skin, it feels soft and warm. Now what if you wake up one day and all of a sudden you can't feel that anymore? Would you feel a sense of loss, a sense of sadness? We take ourselves so seriously far too often. We make plans for so far ahead in life that we forget these small little pleasures in life. Welcome back. James Oppenheim, the famous American author, made a very profound statement. The foolish man seeks pleasure in the distance. The wise grows it under his feet. Awesome things are also universal. Think about it. A cup of Coke here, a cup of cappuccino in Italy, green tea in China, chai in India, or a cup of bush tea in Botswana, all bring smiles to faces. In some sense, we're all connected to each other through these very experiences. Life is made of very small and beautiful moments. How can one possibly underestimate the pleasure of a smile of his kids? For Thomas, the touch of a pet for Shazi, the pleasure of that first drop of sweat for Kevin during a workout. Perhaps the meeting ending on time for Jim. You know what I feel? I think we should try to increase the number of these moments in our life, the variety of these moments, and the intensity with which we can enjoy these moments. We are so focused on what's far ahead that we forget what's right here, these small little pleasures. Norman Lear, the TV producer, sums it up beautifully for me. If you don't collect these tiny pleasures, the big ones don't really mean anything. Toastmaster?
So 1 minute for voting. Speaker 3 is Steve Bertrand. Chattering Monkey. Chattering Monkey, Steve Bertrand.
Here you go. It's time to get out of bed. Why are you even bothering today? You're probably heavier than you were yesterday. Did you just see the shirt you wore yesterday? Fellow Toastmasters, welcome guests, Madam Contest Chair. That's not an irate neighbor, a bully from down the street. It's not even the guy on the radio when my alarm goes off in the morning. It's something that I like to call the chattering monkey. That little voice in the back of your head that tells you you're not good enough, that stops you from doing things on a regular basis. How many of you, by a show of hands, have had experience with said chattering monkey? Good, so I'm not alone. Well, recently, I changed careers. I had an opportunity to run my own business. And I wanted to have a really good shot at it. I got some severance from my last job, different things like that, so I figured finances are in order. I'm really going to take this on. And I started rollingmotivation.com, a website where I blog self-help and wellness tips. Chattering Monkey chimed in again. Serious? You're going to work for yourself? You know you don't know anything about business, right? I mean, you went to school a few years ago, but what do you really know about actually running a business? And there's guys out there that fail every day in business. Undercapitalization. They're in the wrong market. All these different things are going to stop you from being successful. Now I figured, since I am Mr. Rolling Motivation, I know how to fix this. I'm going to start drinking more water, eating healthier, and above all, take action. So I'm going to stop talking about my business now, because there's one thing I can't stand, and that's shameless self-promotion. So I got myself a gym membership in terms of taking action. And I started going to the gym. I was there at 7:15 every morning. I've been going 3 or more days a week for about the last month. Started feeling really good. That chattering monkey quieted down. Well, after going to the gym about 12 or 13 times, I started to get bored with the exercises that I was doing. Because other than trying to make a million hits on YouTube, I'm not really going to try the treadmill. So I start going around the gym. I start looking at all these different exercises. And I start looking at all the equipment. And with my disability, I have function in my legs. I can walk hanging on to different things. So I thought, maybe I can use the squat rack. I mean, I'm a bit of a meathead, or at least I want to be. So maybe I can design something that'll help me use the squat rack. So I go over to the squat rack. I'm looking at it, analyzing it, staring at it, staring at it. And just before I stopped myself from falling out of my wheelchair, I realized I was no longer looking at the squat rack. I was looking at the girl doing squats. Oh man, did the chattering monkey get a hold of that one again? She caught you. You know she caught you. You're already in a wheelchair. Some people can't handle that. They don't know how to deal with it. And now you're creepy on top of that? Way to go. Just hide in the corner. Maybe she won't see you. So I scooted over to the corner and I grabbed some weights. Man, I've never ripped off that many bicep curls in a row. I was just trying to look busy. So it took me a second. And I quote Homer Simpson from The Simpsons when I say, "Shut up, Rainer, I'll stab you with a Q-tip." I put the weights down, said, "Man up, I'm going to go talk to her." So I go over to the squat rack. And I decide to face my fear. As Tim Ferriss, from the book The 4-Hour Workweek, says, the thing we most fear doing is usually the thing we most need to do. Now you're going to tell me, Steve, really? Talking to this girl is the most important thing you need to do? To you, I say, you should have seen this girl. So I go over and I start chatting. We start having a conversation about what I wanted to do and the ideas that I had as far as making the adaptive technology, and she actually came up with some ideas. And we had a back and forth conversation. She talked to me like a normal person. She didn't think I was creepy. She didn't think I was weird. She didn't run away and hide in the corner. I actually started to think right after that, what else can I do? I mean, I already talked to her, and she's about a 15 on a scale from 1 to 10. Maybe I can go on Dragon's Den and make $1 million. We'll leave that for another day for the chattering monkey. So what I want to encourage everybody here to do is take a look at your life. Not just use this as a story where you came to a contest on a Saturday night and you took some time out of your day to listen to some good speakers. I want you to think about days in your life where you've been stopped from doing what you want to do, where you've been stopped by going for that promotion, or talking to that girl or that guy that you really want to go on a date with, where you've been stopped from reaching your maximum potential. Just remember, eat well and take action. Silence your chattering monkey once and for all. Madam Contest Chair. Madam Contest Chair.
So we just have a minute of silence then whilst we do the final voting. It's a minute and a half. So once you've got your votes, pop them in the box and tell us who you think gave the best speech. Who's your winner? That's 2 minutes, so let's have a look, guys. You finalise your votes if you need to, and just pop in the chat box then, so in the poll. Did you think it's speaker 1? Did you think it's speaker 2? Or did you think it was speaker 3? Who did you think gave that best speech? And I can see the votes changing as they're coming in, and I'll publish them in a minute. Are we all done? Any final votes to come through? Let's see, it's changing slightly. I think it's done, it's stopped moving, so I'm going to end the poll. And you have a clear favourite, a winner. Speaker 3 with 71%. 71%. So clearly you like the third speaker. So that is your winner in the contest. But let's take it a step further. Let's see if I can, oh, I've got to reset that poll. There we go. Who did you put second? Who was your second? Who did you think came second in that contest? Let's see who we placed for second as well. And then afterwards, be thinking about, and I'll ask you to comment as well, how you found doing the contest. How did you find that? Easy? Did you find it tricky? Was it great? What did you think of it? So tell me as well as a comment, what did you think while waiting for the votes to come in? How did you find the contest? How did you find that contest? And to having to use that form with the 1 minute, and that is quite challenging. I know when I first started, using 1 minute to get all the voting done is a challenge. So any final votes on that? I think we're done on that. Let me close that vote. Here we go. There we go. Speaker 2 came in second with 43%. So there we have it. Speaker 3 was first, speaker 2 was second, and speaker 1 by default will be third. So let me go back to the chat, see how you found it. Comment, you need, absolutely, you do need to be fast. You don't have too long. That minute, when you're sitting in as a spectator in the audience, it's quite a while. But when you're judging, it is challenging, which is why we ask for silence to help as well. Susanna trying to be impartial and fair with stuff. It is a challenge. That's why it's good to use that kind of the criteria we have down the side. Speech development is tough to measure so fast. Yeah, I agree. It is a challenge. And that's why it's good to practice on things like that. Richard, hard to decide between first and second. It can be. And I think sometimes in contests, there's some people literally put feather between them in your own mind who came first or second. But as judges, that's exactly what we need to do. Another question. Oh, Richard was asking, who chooses the judges? The judges at club level are normally chosen by the person who's organising the contest. They would go out and about to try and find them. And I think we really, in club contests, should be trying to get people from outside to do that. You can use internal people. And if your club is in a rural area, then that's probably exactly what you would need to do. Well, I'm based in London. I feel there's enough clubs around London and Greater London to support us that we don't need to do that. When it gets to area, the area would ask presidents to nominate some people. When it gets to division, the division director asks area directors to nominate. And when it gets to district, I ask the division directors to nominate some people to take them on. And it's always a challenge to get judges, I will tell you. You think people would be keen to do it, keen to take roles, but even trying to get people to put themselves forward can be a challenge. So if you want to do it, please volunteer. It's always very much appreciated as well. Challenge when the speakers are following. It is. It is for the mind. You could be thinking about one speaker and the next one's now started, Mohammed. I totally get that. It is a challenge. That's why it's good to practice, you see, to do this. So when you're doing these kind of situations. Let's have a look at some case studies. And again, love to you to tell me what do you think as we look at these case studies or these kind of situations. Here we go. Let's look at this first one. Where is it? There it comes. What do you think on this one? Let's see your thoughts on this. What do you think? Can this person now compete? Because I have paid their money after all. Are they okay to compete? What do you think, my friends? Mohammed straight in with no. Anybody else got thoughts? Can this person now compete? What do you think? Mohammed says they need to be paid to TMI. Any other thoughts? I know you're still there, so I'd like to have some other thoughts on what it is. Can this person... they didn't have 6 speeches, so no. Okay. Susanna, no. Why not? Okay. So third point, it's the international speech. You do need to have 6 speeches. You've got to have completed 6 speeches to compete. All the other contests you don't need to have. So the evaluation, the table topics, or the humorous speech, you do not need to have done 6 speeches, only the international. Which it also says no. Well, the answer is, and as Mohammed quite rightly said, you cannot compete. The membership needs to have been paid. And Richard says, well, it's got to have been paid to Toastmasters. So you have to be registered with Toastmasters International as a member before the contest. If a person competes and they are not registered with Toastmasters International, they will be disqualified. And sadly, this does happen. So it's an important point to realise. I've had it where we had it, I think, last year where somebody won the table topics contest as a new member. She paid her membership fee to the treasurer, who would get round to paying his Toastmasters. But he hadn't. So when she got through to the area contest and the area director checked, she wasn't eligible. And naturally, as a brand new member, delighted that she'd won her first contest, she now gets told she's disqualified. And at yes, in the autumn, we had the other 2 contests, the humorous and table topics. And when it got to division, I know one division had 2 people get through who were not members at the club level. Now, in fairness, the area director should have picked that up, but they were both disqualified. And I've even had it where people got through to district, and I've checked, and they weren't members, they get disqualified. We don't want that. It's not great for the members, is it, either? So if you're organising contests, you're involved in your club, let's make sure they are registered as well. Let's look at our next scenario. What happens on this scenario? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? We kind of covered on this. So hopefully it's easy peasy lemon squeezy, as I used to say. What would happen if, do we count the form? Do we just count the third 2? What's the best thing we would want to do in this situation? What can we do with this judge's ballot form? What can we do? What do you think? I'll just Richard, tear it up. Tear it up, valid, invalid. Count the first 2 as long as it's signed. Sadly, the form, more coming in, ballot form. Yeah, sadly, the form is invalid. They've not completed it properly. It's invalid. So as Richard says, we can basically tear it up and cancel it, Carmen. Exactly right. It's not valid. The form has to be. So therefore, you want to make sure that you put in that first, second and third, because if you miss it, sadly, all your hard work is for naught. And what about this situation as well? Another, and sadly, a common situation I see. As Chief Judge, one I strive not to have, but we do see. I mean, how many would we end up counting, do you think? Mohammed, only one would be valid. Let's see. So Mohammed straight in with only one. Richard, 4. Susanna, only 1. Any other faults? Jose, 1 ballot is valid. The last 3 invalid. So let's look at this. Okay. So 4 judges sign and print their names on the ballots. That's okay. That's what we want. So 4 have signed. They've signed. They've printed. That's good. So 4 have signed. 1 judge only prints his name on the ballot form but does not sign it. Sadly, we can't now use their form. So we've still got the original 4. 1 judge neither signs nor prints his name on the ballot. We can't use theirs. That gets destroyed. And 1 judge only signs her name. Again, that can't be counted. So we'd have 4 valid ballot papers. Only the top 4 are valid because you need to sign and print your name. It's what the rules say. So 4 ballots. The top 4 are counted. The others, sadly, are not. So always, again, be sure to clearly sign and print your name. And in the counting room, they would write down your judge's name and the vote. So again, when you print your name, make it eligible, especially if you've got dodgy writing like mine. Try and be neat and tidy as well. And let's have a look at our next case scenario. What can we do here? What do you think we can do on this one? Our penultimate case study and situation. What can we do on this one? What could we do you think, with this official complaint? It's one a bit more tricky. What could we do? Mohammed, fast off again. Complaints can only be accepted by judges or participants. Excellent. We will have the winners, says Richard. Yes, we would have the winners in this situation. So what could we do about this? Someone wants to make an official complaint. Any other thoughts on what we could do? Because it is true that, as we kind of said, once the results are announced, they're final. Too late and release, follow up with a regular complaint procedure and response in 28 days according to policy. Once the results are announced, so this is only under saying follow up within 28 days. But actually, you know what? Once the contest results are announced, it's too late. It's too late. And people often will come to me and make a complaint about a speech or a contest or whatever. It's too late. There's no exceptions. So that's the first thing. Once the results are announced, it's final. And secondly, and I think Mohammed said quite rightly, that complaints or protests can only be lodged by contestants and by judges. That's it. Those 2 criteria. And that can only be on eligibility or originality. So only contestants and judges can lodge a protest on originality or eligibility. That's all. So audience members are pure spectators. They have no role in the contest. They cannot lodge protests, and official or otherwise, they have absolutely no right. Might sound a bit harsh, but under the rules, and that's the rules we operate, that's all they are. They're spectators. So there's the 2 things. First of all, an audience member can't. And secondly, as we've said, once the results are announced, they are final. So even a judge or a contestant sadly would not be able to lodge any offers, and people sadly do that as well. Okay, one more. Let's have a look at our final one. What can we do on this situation? What would you do? What would you do? Susanna, no, scoring cannot be shared. Absolutely. Rich, be polite and say you cannot comment. Yes, always be polite. Talk about the weather instead. Always a good thing, Mohammed. Oh, funny. I like that. Absolutely, Jose. No, cannot show them. You can't. No, mystery. It is a mystery. You cannot. Absolutely right. You know what? Decline. If they happen to know you're a judge, decline to engage. Because once you open the conversation, it's like a can of worms. You don't know where it's going to lead. We're not there to do that, because then you're starting to justify, why did you give them that vote? Why didn't you vote them higher? And how you were wrong. So absolutely right. We will talk about the weather. We will decline to discuss it. And absolutely say, if they know you're a judge, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to. It's under the rules. Quite right, guys. Totally decline. It's what to do. So when you're going to contest, if you're a contest chair, if you need any information, we have a wonderful website on our district in the UK, District 91. You can go there for the resources. There's the judging sheet that I use. So if you're a chief judge, or you have a chief judge, or you will have a chief judge, maybe print it off to make sure they've got it. Contest chairs, there's scripts there of what to do before, during the contest for each of the 4 contests that we run as well. So use those and help the people with their contest. The forms we need, all the forms you need for the contest are also there available for download, particularly the evaluation contest. Please be aware, the evaluation contest, there's a special sheet the contestants have to use for the evaluation contest for their notes. There's only one sheet they can use. They cannot use their iPad. They cannot use a sheet of paper out the photocopier. They have to use the official Toastmasters form. Now, in fairness, it is a white sheet of paper with a logo and some type, but that's the only one we can use for evaluation contests. The contestants can have more than one copy. They can have 10 copies they want, but we have to do it fairly that then all the contestants have the same 10 copies. But please, when you do an evaluation contest, make sure that is all the contestants have for it. That is my email address. If you get any questions before the contest, feel free to drop me a message and I'll be delighted to help you in any way I can. If there are any other questions, please put them in the chat box now as we finish up today's session. But guys, thank you so much for giving up part of your evening to come and to join me to learn about how we can be better judges, how we can raise the standard of judges in our clubs and our contests, and to make them that wonderful showcase that they can be, to help all our members, all our guests, and everybody else who has the pleasure of watching those amazing contests, and which they can be. So thank you for giving up your time to join me on that as well. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Susanna, as well. Annalise, Jose, Mohammed, Richard, just reading down this. Guys, thank you very much for giving up your time. And I will look forward to seeing you around the clubs, the areas, the division, and maybe even the district conference as we go through our cycle here in the UK, or maybe even abroad one day as well. Guys, thank you very much for everything. I appreciate your nice comments as well. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I look forward to seeing you on the circuit and around our clubs very soon then. Enjoy your rest of the evening and take care. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.